first, I guess, if you can introduce yourself and your name.
Yeah, my name's John Romero. I'm a program director for the Texas A&M Cybersecurity Center and in charge of workforce development and outreach for the students.
Okay. So how did you get into cybersecurity?
That is an interesting story. I was a software developer for a very long time, and we didn't call it cybersecurity back in the day. We called it information security. And I really didn't like those people because they always say no. But what happened was, as I matured more and more in my job, programming and doing software development, I understood the complexities. Once we started having cybersecurity vulnerabilities and threats actively against us. So then I had to actually learn how to navigate that in software code, right, to be a little bit more secure. And then the company I was working for at the time, I was one of the few people that had a computer science degree and an instructor degree. And so they were asking me to teach cybersecurity. And I reluctantly said no, and then yes, and now I love doing it. So I'm happy that I fell into this and very appreciative.
Okay. What is the difference between a vulnerability and a threat?
That's a good question. So a threat is an active threat. In other words, somebody is trying to do harm. Okay, by whatever means. It doesn't even go down to cybersecurity. It could just mean a physical threat. But a vulnerability is a way to utilize something that should not exist to cause harm, right? So if I was in an active engagement for a threat, I would find what we call vulnerabilities in the systems. In other words, prod. And if you are a Jurassic Park fan, you remember the Raptors always prodding the fence and testing it and testing it. So they were testing it for vulnerabilities. And then once they found out that the fence was no longer on, then the threat was live and active, right? Because they wanted to eat everybody. So, yeah, that's the difference between a vulnerability and a threat.
What are the common types of cyber attacks?
Gosh, the most common type of cyber attack has to deal with not necessarily what we would consider a cyber attack. In other words, computer attack. It's actually us as humans. So it would be what we call social engineering attacks. Y'all are very familiar with that. It's phishing campaigns or clicking links in emails, but it goes way beyond that. I mean, now we can do social engineering by calling somebody on a phone, and which we call voice vishing is what we kind of call it, and tricking somebody into giving me access into the building or into their system or something like that. We do it with SMS text. We can do it in multiple different ways. But the base of social engineering is hacking the mind. So it's tricking somebody into doing something they would not normally think is okay.
Okay. And then how are individuals at risk for cyber attacks? Kind of tying into the last question.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's at risk from a cyber attack because we are a technology focused community now. I mean, we just can't go back unless you live in the woods somewhere. And even then, you're probably going to be running solar, you're probably going to have some tech. So, the cyber threat is real. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a small business, medium business, large, or even at home. And now we're even finding children with cyber risks because, they might go somewhere on their phone or somebody could do some social engineering to, attack them or do those things. So it is huge. It's in our everyday life. We can't go back yet, unfortunately, but it's one of those balances that we have to do.
What can individuals do to protect themselves, given the current vulnerabilities?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. What can you do to protect yourself? So honestly, be vigilant and get training. And it doesn't have to be formal training, but just understanding what's out there, how people are attacking you. And it doesn't matter for home or work. It's if you understand how the threats happen, which we call attack vectors, right? So if you understand how the attack vectors work and how they manipulate you into doing something, you'll get a better understanding on how to protect yourself, and you understand what's out there. Unfortunately, sometimes that's breaking trust with people. Um, but we live in a society and we hope that we do have some trust with people, but trust and verify is usually what I usually say.
Okay. In the last 1 to 2 years, how much have you seen cyber attacks go up or increase?
I think just because of the volume, cyber attacks are happening more and more frequently. And it's because we have what we call different attack surfaces. So now we're buying Internet of Things, internet connected refrigerators and TVs and all of these devices. Pretty soon, we're all going to be driving a connected car. Some of us already have that. So I've seen the surface area attacks increase because we're finding better ways to find these vulnerabilities, as we discussed before, and then perform these attacks on people.
What are some of the more interesting ways you've heard of people getting scammed or cyber attacked?
One of the most interesting ways. One of the ones I was talking to my friend today about was one that I was very fascinated with. It's now how we're using fobs or phones to unlock our doors in our cars. And we have an attack method where we can actually get close to the victim inside of a building somewhere with a $10 radio, basically. And now I have access to your phone. And then I send another person out with another $10 radio. And those two radios talk to each other far, far away. And the way that the key fobs work and the way that the phone opens the door is a communication between the phone and Bluetooth and back and forth. So we capture it remotely by sitting here in this room while your Tesla is right over there and I'm right here. So the car is sending signals saying, I think you're next to me. So, and then it says, yes, I'm right next to you. Open up my Tesla. And the Tesla opens up and you can get right in and start up the car and drive off.
It's terrifying. Yeah, my apartment it offered that, and I was like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Honestly, he's ruined me for like everything.
Well, that's
like,
good.
Everything
That's
technological,
great.
I'm like, no, I'm good.
I like that. You gotta be careful.
Yeah. Okay. What are red flags to look for in whenever you receive an email?
This is tricky. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. You have to know a lot. If you're doing an email campaign or if you're worried about getting phishing at work, you have to know people's email addresses. You have to be vigilant. Look at those email addresses. Does it have a sense of urgency? Is there generic terms in there like hello colleagues or something like that? Weird signatures, usually it would come from, Jane or Joe, and normally now it just says customer care or something like that. So those are the ways we can do it at work. At home, it's also tricky because we're getting bombarded by phishing attacks that are coming through our filters. And if you have some kind of software filter at home, perhaps, some of our email clients will do that. But they look legitimate, and they might even have your name because they kind of put those two together, sent your email, they know your name, and it says, Dear John, blah, blah, blah. You're tracking, your package is not going to be delivered unless you click this link and prioritize it. Your mom is not going to get her Christmas gift on time. And so all of a sudden I'm like, yes, I want that. And I click it. It's tough. But those red flags, a sense of urgency, just something in your gut, like this doesn't look right. I usually tell people, don't click anything in an email, period. Unless I know it's coming from somebody, okay, fine, and then I'll do it. But even then, sometimes if it's just out of the blue, I'll actually make a phone call. And that goes for text as well. So text is the up-and-coming way to do phishing. And if you get a weird text from your friend, even if it's his phone number or her phone number, that's easy to do, that's easy to spoof, and just out of the blue to click this link, check out this video or something, that's a red flag. And you probably just need to pick up the phone and call them. You probably haven't seen them in a while. And so you can say hello.
Yeah, yeah. No, I used to get a lot of those where it would be like
Oh,
someone
yeah.
sending you money on Zelle.
Oh, exactly.
I was like, oh yeah, because I'm sure a random stranger is sending me money.
Right.
That'd be great.
Right.
You know?
And if they got really good, they would do it so it came from your friend.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And then the next question is a rapid fire with 5 quick questions.
Okay, rapid fire.
Yes.
Right.
So the first one is, what is a password manager?
A password manager is a piece of software that allows us to collectively hold those passwords in one location that's easy to use across your devices. It usually creates long, hard to remember passwords, but it remembers them for you. And the reason why we like those is because we do not want people reusing passwords or coming up with very simple passwords. And the password manager kind of takes care of both of those.
Okay. The second one is, what is multi-factor authentication?
Multi-factor. That'll save us. So we just need a 2-step process no matter what it is. It could be a bio read on your phone. Nowadays, we have to look at our phone and open it up, right? So a multi-factor authentication is just that. It's like, yes, you logged in. I don't recognize this browser. I'm going to make sure it's you, and then you can look at your code. I highly recommend, by the way, that you set up multi-factor authentication through an authenticator app and not necessarily getting an SMS text message, because an SMS text message can be spoofed. Actually, using social engineering, we can go to AT&T or Verizon or whoever you're using, get a new SIM card with your number, and now I can request that number for your bank or whatever. So we've been pushing auth codes. Pretty soon there won't even be passwords. I don't know if you are aware. So the big 3, Microsoft, Apple, and Google, are working on a way that we won't even have to remember passwords. We're actually going to use a type of bioscan and authentication method, almost what we're used to now, but it'll allow us to get right in.
Okay.
It might query us something like the number 32. Microsoft already does that. And so you can pull up your authenticator, press the 32, and you log into your device somewhere else. It's pretty nice.
Interesting. Okay, cool. What makes a strong password?
A strong password. A strong password is a long password. And that's hard for us as humans to remember, but if we do a passphrase, something that we can remember, is much better. The longer, the better. For instance, I wouldn't say use "May the Force be with you" because that's out there for database. We have that password out there. People use that all the time. But something that your grandmother told you that only you know about, that's a really good one. Or even 4 random words. You could use green Ferrari, red toad, or whatever you want. And those is almost impossible to crack. Very difficult. Longer the better.
Okay. Should you log on to public Wi-Fi?
Should you log on to public Wi-Fi? I would say it depends on what you're doing. I personally am always nervous about public Wi-Fi. And if I get on somebody's public Wi-Fi site, I instantly turn on a VPN. I will also never ever do, even if I have my VPN turned on, I will never do any business. In other words, I won't log into my emails. I won't do anything like that. I'm just using it maybe to surf the web or something. I'm not into social media, but, people could use it for that. I just don't trust public Wi-Fi like that at all, even with a VPN.
Okay. And then the last question, how often should you update your phone or computer?
Every time it tells you. And even at random when you don't know, every once in a while I'll go in there into my phone and do settings check, and then it'll say it's up for an upgrade, and it never told me. I have it on an auto cycle to tell me that it does one, but it didn't. So I kind of do it. Sometimes I'm sitting in the morning, maybe getting a cup of coffee or wait for the coffee maker to finish brewing. I might just do my devices that I have handy next to me, but always, always, always do them. Now that might change in a corporate environment because corporations won't allow the upgrades to come out yet because it might hurt business. So they normally go into a testing mode, they test those things, and then they release them a couple of days, couple of weeks later. But as individuals, every single time.
Okay. So the next question is, What is just some general advice for someone that's wanting to get into cybersecurity?
Some advice. Who wants to get into cybersecurity? That's a great question. We need people to get into cybersecurity bad. Coming from a program director for workforce, I am trying to get students involved, and we need to fill the gaps so that we can hire great folks here in the States. We have a huge gap. My advice is this: you may not feel as though that you're that techie. That's okay. We still need you because you might be really good at risk or law or policy making, and you understand it because you use it every day. So you understand what's good and what's bad. So we need those people, non-techies and techies alike, to come into cybersecurity. So my advice would be, don't get discouraged if you're not a techie. And if you are a techie, you're probably already involved with cybersecurity. But if you're not a techie, get involved and find out more information because there's a spot for you.
Okay, and then the last question is, what is advice for small business owners wanting to keep their customers' information safe?
What is some advice? Well, how much time do we have? So, the basics, what I tell small to medium-sized businesses when I visit them, is they have to understand it. They more than likely need to come to a training session and just like a lunch and learn, like what I've provided. Understand the threats that are out there. Understand that there are places that you can go for your business to help you. You do not have to design this from scratch. You do not have to be a computer scientist. You can find policies online that the U.S. government or the Department of Commerce have provided for you, other individuals, and you can get help. So that's the biggest thing, is training to get that first step into figuring out, what do I need to do to keep my business and my data, my information, my client information safe from breaches and things like that. And then what happens if I do have a breach? Again, with that training, you understand what we need to do to make a plan in order to protect ourselves if that does unfortunately happen.